into this mix. Mind playing tricks in the fiend for the fix.
This is Rudkowski of WeAreChange.org here in beautiful Sedona, Arizona, to talk about Donald Trump. Yes, the reason we're doing that is because everyone in the mainstream media has been talking about the divide Donald Trump has caused within the Republican Party, but no one has really talked about the divide between the anti-establishment, where we have strong sides going against each other. We have people like Alex Jones, Walter Blake, Lou Rockwell, Stefan Molyneux, all putting their weight behind Donald Trump. And then we have people like Ron Paul, Jeffrey Tucker, and of course these two individuals, Adam Kokesh of thefreedomline.com and Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance, who are saying, no, Trump is not the answer. But I wanted to talk to you guys specifically about the fact what contributed to this kind of divide of the anti-establishment with these two major parties going against each other right now.
I don't think this caused the divide. What it's done is reveal a divide. But first, if you're watching this right now, like, you really shouldn't even be watching this. Like, go do something useful. Like, we're talking about Donald Trump in the woods. Like, it's beautiful here. I don't want to be doing this. You, like, go read my book, read his book. You know, go watch some of Luke's other videos that are about, like, important things, about how to live more free and be a more beautiful person. And maybe we'll get to come back to that here. But what it's revealed, I will, because Luke's a good friend of mine. I owe Luke a lot. So I'm going to answer your question because you asked me to. So if you're still watching and care to see this insight that we can get from looking at Donald Trump, it's that there are a lot of people in the movement, and the problem is in how we define that. And, you know, I like to think of the broadest possible terms of the movement of humanity towards a voluntary society, evolving towards an ethical society. And if you say, well, it's these people, or it's these people, or the people who think like me on this, or agree with me on this, then yeah, you're gonna be disappointed because there's only one person who agrees with you on absolutely everything. And expecting people to be on the same page and share your values when you define them very specifically is not realistic. So we've seen that there are a lot of people who, when we talk about voluntarism specifically, we're never really on the same page.
This from the man who's running for president in 2020, by the way, Adam Kokesh. We're going to get into that in a whole different video. But what I wanted to talk about is, what do you say to the people? Obviously, you guys are in that one particular camp that says don't vote for Trump. What do you say to people who are like, well, he said Bush knew about 9/11. He will audit the Federal Reserve. He's pissing off the Koch brothers. He's destroying the Republican Party. Why wouldn't you support Donald Trump if he is anti-establishment?
I think that for me, that's probably been the most disturbing thing to see in this campaign, is that people are actually talking about Donald Trump like he is anti-establishment. When you can, see years and years of history of him speaking, supporting Democrats, supporting all kinds of sides, basically being a businessman, being willing to say whatever it takes to get his deals made, and being a politician, even though he has no career being a politician. I also think it's disturbing that so many activists out there who are awake to the New World Order or just the state and have, talked about a lot of real topics over the last 5 or 6 years and been awake during the Obama age, the two terms of Obama, now all of a sudden believe the narrative that the mainstream media is feeding. Like, the mainstream media says that Donald Trump's this bad thing, and everybody, Alex Jones and other people are getting behind saying, this is why we need to support him. Here's the evidence. They hate him.
The media hates him. That's why they're giving him so much coverage.
Yeah. But then you can see that Trump gets coverage more than anybody else out there. And, for those who would then say, well, then who should we vote for? The other side is Hillary or Bernie, or, there's no other candidate. I would say that, be principled. If that means not voting or voting for a third party, do that. But you don't have to think that your only option is Trump or Hillary. And even if, let's assume that Trump is being ignored by the media and they don't like him, right? Even beyond that, his message sucks. There's no principles to it. He's all over the place. He would increase and create a bigger police state. He's an authoritarian overall, despite, any sort of speaking out against the establishment that he may seem to be. I think it's all a charade. And
I want to give him to be a little more charitable, because Trump is a human being. He's having fun with this. I get the one temptation that some of these people have, that he's fun to watch because he's stirring things up. And, I don't have any faith in his integrity, because he's taken so many opposing positions and evolved a little too much, to be a real deliberate, thoughtful person of principle. But I think he does in a way represent being significantly anti-establishment. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that and say, well, that's a result of the market having shifted. Like, we can rejoice in a sense as activists and say, hey, we've at least pulled it this far that now the populist thing is a guy who is at least nominally less interventionist, has talked about Iraq and 9/11 a little more in line with what we'd like to see. And that's a good thing to celebrate. That doesn't mean you vote for him, because everything else you said about him is true.
Well, because what I want to add to that is
and those arguments apply to Bernie Sanders just as well as Donald Trump.
And the arguments that he just made that, well, he's like, sort of good on foreign policy, or at least all right, not too bad. That's the argument that libertarians for Trump are trying to make. And when I see that, I hear people who are basically, we believe in this ideal, whether you're a libertarian or not, you have principles you believe in trying to pursue and create freedom. And you've tried that for so long, but hey, it hasn't worked, so let's just vote for the lesser of two evils now and see if that works. And at least they'll stop our enemies and suppress them in some ways, and that's better than nothing, right? But I don't know, it's just disturbing, because I think a lot of people various people met through Ron Paul's movement, because that was the last, anti-establishment candidate. Now a lot of people are waking up through Bernie Sanders, whether you agree with him or not. People are coming together around that. A lot of people met through this Ron Paul movement, and it's been 4 years now since the 2012 RNC, when plenty of people lost faith in the system then. And now I guess they're open to these ideas of Trump. We've gone further to this extreme, because there is no freedom candidate out there.
If you lose faith in the system, but you don't find faith in yourself, you're susceptible to going right back to it.
Absolutely.
You guys are going to the solutions before I get to even get there and ask you the questions about it. But hold on just a second, because also the very fact that Donald Trump wants to militarize the police, he said he wants to assassinate Edward Snowden, and he wants to torture people and torture family members of other people. Those are some of the things that a lot of anti-establishment people use as a way to say, wait, Donald Trump is not really that anti-establishment. What do you think are some of the kind of policies or some of the decisions that Donald has made that has impacted you more to be on this side?
I think no matter what way people try to frame it, refugees, immigration crisis, or say, if we allow more people to come to the country, they're going to vote Democratic, they're going to vote for the state, they're going to empower the government. Building a wall, or collectivizing entire people, Muslim, whatever they may be, and saying you want to survey them or whatever it may be, is just that's authoritarian. It's nothing to do with freedom. I can't stand behind that at all.
Now, if going into a voting booth once every 4 years and magically just pressing a button or marking a piece of paper doesn't change our lives, what will?
Getting to know yourself, working on yourself, getting to know who you are as a human being, understanding your pursuit and your path to freedom, checking out Agorism, the new Libertarian Manifesto, looking into counter-economics, basically building counter-institutions to the state. Every area that you see that you feel you're being oppressed by Monsanto and the food or the government or education, whatever it may be, try to pursue and create an alternative to that, and do it in a way that doesn't involve violence and force and theft the way the state operates.
We're on the verge of a phase shift for humanity, a paradigm shift to a whole different phase of existence that really is long overdue. And we have a sense now of the inevitability of it and seeing how statism is being rendered obsolete. So getting to be a part of that is just an incredible part of being alive right now, the human experience. And the people in power, however you want to define them, the beneficiaries of statism, are getting their last licks in, and they know it's just a matter of time. And the worst thing they can do to delay us is make us feel like we're alone, or we should be ashamed of what we believe in, or we got to go into politics and argue with people. And it's not about arguing with people. It's about showing a beautiful vision for humanity to move forward. It's about sharing what makes our lives better, how we live more free. And this is a beautiful part of what Derrick does with his message. And when I see all the different ways, people who think this is the answer, this is the answer, this is the answer, there's one thing that it comes down to, and I'm not anti-political. I think that at some point, politics is a very important part of the how we dismantle the institutions. But that's secondary, a distant secondary priority to the paradigm shift, to changing how people think. And that happens when we get over that fear that they've inundated us with, that they've really conditioned us to have, that makes us feel like we have to be ashamed of what we believe in and what we see. And just as people who are dreamers, who look forward to a better world and want to be a part of that, they want you to say, no, accept the way it is because it's benefiting me right now. Mm-hmm. And no matter what you see as the how, whether it's straight up we're bleeding the system, we're checking out, we're opting out, we're raising awareness, we're making it so they can't get away with anything, or we're voting to dismantle the institutions from the top down, which is what I see as the most important part of the how. There's no way around the fact that to make our visions real, we have to involve other people in them. We have to share them. We have to share them with passion and with love and get other people on board in those visions. And we can't give into that fear.
Yep. And ultimately, a lot of fear is dividing and conquering all of us, making us forget that the true answer is within ourselves.
So let me throw that back on you, because you just asked us. First, let's talk about you going to a voting booth. Trump or Clinton? Where are you at? Or third party, even. You know, I'll give you that option. Trump, Clinton, third party. I know everybody in the comment section is wondering, like, is Luke supporting Trump? Is he for? You know, we know you're not against Clinton. You don't seem to be for Bernie. But sometimes it's uncertain when it comes to Trump.
Well, when it comes to Trump, there is a perplexing view, mainly because of his stances when it comes to saying Bush knew about 9/11. We need to audit the Federal Reserve. We need to have good relations in Syria. We need to have good relations with Putin. We need to end all these foreign conflicts. So I understand when he's making those statements how he could galvanize a whole group of people who are initially anti-establishment. But when it comes to me personally as a journalist, I think it's fair not to pick a particular side, because as I say, look, Trump is saying all these things that is actually pretty amazing for a candidate to actually say on the national stage that has never been said. I also say, look, Trump wants to torture individuals. Trump wants to torture the family members of different individuals. He wants to assassinate people. He wants to strengthen libel laws, which would hurt the First Amendment. And I even called him out on his daddy issues, gave him a psychological evaluation based on his childhood and the way he grew up, describing what kind of person he is. And obviously, he is, to me, the better choice for the lesser of two evils if you decide to play in that political system, which I have never did, mainly because as a journalist, I try to be as objective as I can. And I think if I would come out either against him or for him, it would compromise the kind of audience relationship that I have with letting them make up their own mind. Because ultimately, the ultimate faith I have is in people, is in individuals, is in everyone, and not just one person, because I don't believe we should give up our power to any individual above ourselves. Because when you do that, ultimately, you're just taking away something that you could do within yourself that could be a better solution, that could be a way better answer than just thinking you're making a difference by voting once every 4 years. So it's a very complex answer. It's not a yes or no answer.
Bullshit. Bullshit.
Some would call it bullshit.
There's no such thing as objective journalism.
I
By
would
covering something,
Ben Swan
just
has
by
shown that.
covering something, you are saying,
You have an
this
opinion.
is important.
Yeah.
This is worth your time to pay attention to this. That alone is defined by your subjective choice of what to cover and what is important. And whether or not you know of a specific intent that boils down to, I'm going to vote for this candidate. Because you could tell me right now, hey, if you had to vote for someone, if everybody who's running for president right now, Adam, who would you vote for? I could tell you, And I'd rather not.
Austin
but I
Peterson.
No, I won't say. And if you really put me on the spot, I have no problem saying it. I'd rather not. I don't think it's important. But to say that I'm just an objective journalist, I really do think that, because I love you, I have to tell you that I think you're copying out of something.
Yeah,
I understand.
No, I appreciate that argument, and I never made the argument for objective journalism. I'm not objective in any way, shape, or form. I am biased based on my personal experiences and what I see, but I cover things as a way to highlight what I think is important. Ultimately, I do think it's important to cover some of the anti-establishment policies of Trump, and I think it's also important to cover his status policies. But ultimately, I think
it's important to ignore him.
But ultimately, he is a topic of conversation that's happening nationally in this country. And because of my particular point of view, I want the audience for themselves to decide what they think is best for them,
right,
and not tell them.
And I think there's a way of saying that doesn't need you. It doesn't require you to fall back on objective journalism or that cop out, because you can say, this is where I'm coming from, and that's why I'm presenting you this, and I'd like you to come to this conclusion. But for me, and you know this from my book, that there's nothing in there that isn't like, you're not going to agree with me because I say so. logical fallacies in my appeals. It's all, I want you to get this because you know this, because you understand this, because you came to this conclusion through your own reason and evidence. There's a conclusion I want you to come to because this is my vision, and I need you to come to the conclusion of at least some of the premises that I have to see the beauty of my vision.
Yeah. Again, there's no objective journalism. I'm not objective. It doesn't exist. But again, I want the audience to have their own point of view and to make up their own mind and to kind of lead them down this path.
Let me ask
by
you
themselves.
one more question. I definitely appreciate and understand as a journalist too as well, like not wanting to have your personal opinion shape people necessarily. But at the same time, I think, when we're passionate, we understand certain ideas, we should, spread that message. But let me ask Luke as an individual, Luke the journalist, what are the other solutions, outside of voting? Like you said, you haven't voted for anybody. You mentioned earlier you didn't vote for Ron Paul. What do you find solutions? Obviously journalism, but what else do you see in 2016 as a solution?
Psychologically fixing human mankind, getting rid of insecurities, getting rid of ego, getting rid of horrible personal relationships that people have within themselves, getting past a lot of childhood traumas that people go through that affect them throughout their entire lives, and just to the ultimate kind of step of raising your kids properly,
Your
not
content
spanking
has
them,
shifted to that.
not beating kids up or not using physical force, and ultimately understanding that you and yourself as an individual, your life is decided purely by you. If you decide to play into the system, give it legitimacy by voting or by paying taxes. You are enabling these things instead of being a free individual and moving outside of them naturally with your small actions, because ultimately it is those small actions of moving away from all these problems and creating the solutions within ourselves that will cause this evolution and not a complete revolution that will bring us back to the same place and probably violently. That's my solution.
Thank you to Luke.
What do you
Thank
say?
Adam. Awesome. Peace.